And hello, everyone. Good evening from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. This is Nawal Al-Hamwi. Firstly, I want to thank our sponsor, StreamYard, for sponsoring our event. We couldn't have done it without their help, so thank you, StreamYard, for helping the community. We will be having in the coming days sessions about Android development, as well as what are the latest updates in Android 11, so stay tuned. And in case you missed any Android session of ours, you can find it in the Android playlist in our channel. So today is day 2. And we have tonight with us Murad Tiner. Murad Tiner is a developer advocate for Android at Google. Murad has been an Android developer back to Froyo, worked on wearable and other form factor Android devices. He's a code geek, open source commenter, Java champion, and author of Expert Android Studio and Professional Java Enterprise Edition Design Patterns books. So, yes, Murad, the stage is all yours. Good luck.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for inviting and thanks for the introduction. Usually, if we were in a person-to-person event, I always tell, oh, thank you a lot for all the GGG organizers. Please go out and hug your organizers and thank them so they recharge their energy for the next event. But don't do that now, but still thank them. And we owe them a lot. Cool. So we'll talk about what's new in Android 11 today. And I also added a few more slides. So this will be, if you have seen this deck before, it will be different. So stay tuned. I'm Murad. I'm a developer advocate at Android DevRel. And today we will start with what's new with the operating system, Android 11. Then we'll talk about some new stuff in the tools, and finally, libraries. But first, let's start with the UI. Why? Because UI is the most visible part, and both the developers and our users see the UI changes first. The UI changes, when we look at the UI changes, I guess we need to start with the window Insets API, which is significantly improved in Android 11. Basically, this is to help you work with different kinds of windows that can affect insets, such as status bar, navigation bar, and the IME. Yeah, I have slide animations. And to use the window Insets API, basically, you need to add an inset listener, and then you can query for the visible window, such as the keyboard, and act according to what you want, and depending on the visibility of the window you're looking for. Let's switch to IME animations. Actually, the main reason we had the updates at Window Insets API was to enable IME animations. Now that we can get the info on the IME, we can make better IME animation experiences for our users. I need to remind myself about the slide animations. So the system so there are two ways to do this. The first one, the system drives the animation, and you can get notified by your listener about the status of the animation. And the second way is you drive the animation and you decide what happens. To react to a regular keyboard animation, you set a callback, and as I mentioned before, you get notified when the keyboard or the window is animating. And similarly, you can control the animation, and you can basically drive the animation by frame according to scroll or drag movement. If you're interested in that, there's a great sample written by Chris Baines. You can check out the Inset animation sample app from this link. Next, we have conversations. So with Android 11, we have a new concept, person, and conversations is basically a concept around person. Conversations is information about people in UI. If you long press, you can see the settings for each conversation. You can change the priorities. You can which will change the ordering, how it's shown in the notification panel. To use this, first you need to create a person object. Then you need to create a long-lived shortcut. Set your shortcut. Then you need to use messaging style, which is a mandatory thing to use the Conversations API. And then you build your notification with the shortcut info you created before. And now that we have conversations, you might be wondering what is Bubbles. And what Bubbles is actually how conversations take surface and create their own UI, which is reachable from anywhere. Actually, you might be familiar with Bubbles from Android 10 because it was actually a developer option back then. So Bubbles is built on the Notifications API. You basically, all you need to do is you create your new metadata and you have a dedicated activity. It used to be a developer option in Android 10, and with Android 11, now we have it. And basically, it replaces what we used to do with system alert window to create bubbles. If you worked with that before, system alert window was not particularly designed to create bubbles, and it included more permissions and capability than bubbles needed. So it wasn't a very, very good fit. And with the new API, basically, and also another thing was you need to do a lot of boilerplate work. The new Bubble API is all built on the notification API, so you just need to add few lines and your bubbles are ready. And the best thing is it's a system standard feature, so your users know how to turn them on or turn them off, so you don't surprise them and or annoy them. And yes, things I talked before, you need to add the metadata and you need to have a dedicated activity. Let's see how we do this in code. As I mentioned, you need to have a dedicated activity for a bubble so it can start showing itself by using this activity anytime and any size, which means it should be resizable activity. So you need to add your resizable activity to true to your manifest. And then you need to create a new intent with your new activity and create a pending intent over it. Next, similar to conversations, you need to create a shortcut info. And this time, you need to use the bubble metadata builder to build your bubble metadata. And finally, use the notification builder and set your bubble metadata. Again, if you're curious about bubbles and want to learn more, there's a great sample under user interface samples / bubbles Kotlin. Also, you can tune in to listen ADS Backstage 140, which talks about bubbles with the engineering team. With that, let's move to a new topic, privacy. Well, let's see what we can talk about this. Let's start with data access auditing. If you have a large app, it's hard to see which part of the app really accesses a location. Usually, large apps are written by large teams, so you may not be aware what's going on, what other other people in the team are doing to access that resource. And so also, that's not it. If you're using third-party closed SDKs, they might be using the permission given to you to access some data without even your knowledge. So basically, you don't know who is asking for this and why they're asking it and when, where. So data access auditing is a new API, and basically you add a callback and get notified when some part of the app accesses some sensitive information. To use this, you need to add a callback by using AppOps Manager on-op noted callback, and set this then add this callback to AppOps Manager. Oops. Yeah, and when a access occurs, your callback will be called. And if you look at the top of the screen, you can see there are different callbacks for sync and async accesses. So you will be notified even though the access is through a sync or async mechanism. And the nice thing is the callback is called before the caller receives the resource info. So you can have control over what's going on and decide what to do. Next, another big change with Android 11 is one-time permissions. So basically, a one-time permission means the user can grant access to a resource while the app is in use during the app session. No work is necessary, which is the best API and change, I guess, if you follow the best practices which we have been introducing. And the first thing you need to remember is users can reset or revoke your app permissions. So you need to check if you have the permission, and if not, you need to ask for the permission. First, let's start with the background location. First, background location is more restrictive in Android 11. We expect you to first ask for foreground location permission, and then after showing the user what you do with this permission, request for the background permission, which takes the user to settings. So there is no direct way to ask for the permission inside your app, and your user will be taken to the settings screen to give you the permission to the app. We've introduced Foreground Services in Android 10, and with Android 11, we have some new ones. Basically, Foreground Services is just a manifest attribute, and with Android 11, we have new ones for the camera and microphone. To use it, you need to just add this property to your manifest. And as you can see in this sample, you can ask for the camera or the microphone or all together at one shot. We talked about location permission a bit. Let's go back to it and talk in a little more detail. So in Android 10, we splitted the permissions between foreground and background location access. And at the time, we highly encouraged you to incrementally ask for these permissions. With this, the users have better control and better understanding why the app needs that permission and why they need to give you that permission. So there's a lower chance the user simply rejects and you're left without the permission. So with Android 11, this has become a requirement. We ask you to first ask for the foreground access, then move to background. Let's see. For foreground access requests, there are no changes. And this should be probably enough for this level of permission, it should be enough for most apps, unless you're doing something really based on user location. For background access, when you target Android 11, as I mentioned before, you need to first show the user why you are using this permission by asking foreground permission, location permission. After you demonstrate how your app works and why you need the background location, when you ask for the background location, the user is taken to the settings screen. When your app asks for the background permission, the system doesn't show the regular permission dialog, and the user needs to go to settings to give you the permission. So make sure to tell the users why you need the permission before requesting it. We try to make this as easy as possible for you. Once again, there are no changes in the API, and most of the UI flow is controlled by you. So this should not introduce any new changes. If you're targeting Android 10, to ensure compatibility, we still allow you to ask for both foreground and background location in one shot. We don't recommend this, but if you do that, there will be an extended dialog, which will be shown as you see in the slide, and it will have all the different options the user can choose. If an app hasn't been used by the user for, let's say, several months, in Android 11, the system can reset the app permission. This is pretty much like the user open settings and revoke all the permissions of your app. Again, if you're following the best practices, this shouldn't really affect you and your app. Apps need to check for permissions before accessing a resource and request the permission if they don't have it. So basically, if you're following these practices, this shouldn't affect your app. And also, this only affects apps targeting to Android 11. So if your target is not Android 11, again, this will not be happening. There are some changes to package visibility. Let's see some scenarios and what are the changes. First, this API, we use the package manager get installed packages API to query for installed apps and system services on the device. There are some changes to package visibility and how you interact with other apps in Android 11. So for some common scenarios, you don't actually need to change a lot. You don't need to change probably nothing at all. But for some scenarios, you will see there are some changes. Let's take a look at a few samples. First, let's see if you use this API this way to query and get info about your own app. It should work as you would expect. There are no changes. If you use this to query for your app and the system packages, then again, this works as it used to be, so there are no changes and you shouldn't worry about anything. If your app sends an implicit intent for another app to take an action, such as in this case, if you're using the image capture intent to take a picture using the pre-installed camera app, there are no changes. Again, if there is more than one eligible app, the system will show a dialog and the user can choose, and nothing will be affected. If another app calls your app's content provider and expects some results, again, nothing changes. Without making any code change, your app can query and interact with those apps. Besides these scenarios, if your app tries this and query for another app, if another app is installed or not, you will get a name not found exception. You will get this exception regardless of whether the app you're looking for is installed or not. So this is not allowed anymore. If you need to explicitly interact with another app, such as invoking an activity or binding to another service, you need to declare the new queries element in the manifest. This declaration also explicitly specifies the packages your app needs to query or interact with. With this, the app can now query for com.example.store and bind to its service. And as you can see, you can declare multiple package entries inside queries tag. If you need to interact with intents, you can do this with an intent filter signature. This app can now query for all apps that handle an action send intent for JPEG images. Also, if this app calls get installed packages, all apps that handle action sent intent will show up in the result. So if you declare this intent, get installed packages will return you all the apps which can handle action sent intent for JPEG images. In practice, we see that most apps can easily express necessary package interactions with intent and package declarations. However, if you have a specific use case to require query all packages, please let us know, and we'd love to hear your feedback. With that, another big change with Android 11, scope storage, which is actually something we introduced in Android 10. Before the scope storage in Android 10 was introduced, there were two types of external storage, the app storage and the shared storage. And any app with the storage permission used to have access to all shared storage. Android 10's scope storage changed this by separating the media files and other documents. Now, apps can only have access to media files rather than having access to all files in the shared storage. If the app needs to access some other document, it needs to ask the user to grant access to specific document. In Android 10, in Android 10, if you needed to do multiple edits or deletes to some media files which is not contributed by your app, you needed to use the Media Store API, which triggered a dialog for each file you're deleting or editing, which was not a very good user experience. If the user accepted, you will get a callback, then they will see another pop-up because there were multiple requests. In Android 11, we improved this, and the user content flow for editing and deleting media is much smoother. Instead of popping one dialog per request, now you can create batch multiple edit or delete requests, and they will be shown in one dialog. We are super excited about this, and this should be a very good improvement over the user experience. To use the API, let's see some code. You first set the content URI and create an intent, then call start intent sender for results. And if the user grants access, you will get the result. I mentioned some changes, so let's see some restrictions. With Action Open Document 3, apps can no longer access files in some folders. These folders are the root of internal storage, downloads directory, Android data, and Android OBP directory. You also can no longer use the action open document intent to request accessing individual files from Android data and Android OBP directories, and also all subdirectories. If your app has a use case which truly requires accessing all files or most of the files in an external storage, you can declare manage external storage, which will allow you to request the user to grant all file access in settings. Again, this is not, you cannot ask this inside the app and the user will be taking to a settings screen. We understand this might be needed by some apps, such as file managers or backup and restore apps. However, for most apps, you shouldn't really need to use this permission. And also, if you need to access a single or several files, just use the storage access framework and do not ask for permission to access all the files on a device. Imagine you're using an app which asks for permission to access all the files, although it actually needs very few files to really work with. You won't like this, and your users will not too. So make sure you respect their privacy. And check out the Google Play guidelines for apps that needs that manage external storage permission to access all files. We would love to get your feedback on your app's specific needs if you are missing anything. We talked a lot about APIs. Now let's see some other features which can still help developers. First, Wi-Fi debugging. Well, because there is not enough USB ports. And it's not only the USB ports. Now we have different USB ports like USB-C, A, and so. This is actually a real photo from our office when we used to go to office. You can see all the USB plugs are actually occupied, and it's not all. There is also a USB-C dongle which hosts some other USB devices. So to cut it shorter, we don't have enough USB ports, and it's not all. We don't have all the necessary different combination cables. So why not debugging over Wi-Fi? First, this is a very new feature. It's not in the tools yet, so you must enable it from your device and then pair connect using ADB. The first thing you need to do is go to developer settings and enable wireless debugging, and then go to ADB shell and pair your device with the laptop, with your laptop. Another change is the nullability annotations. If you're not sure your app will work without crashing nullable and non-null annotations, we have recently nullable and recently non-null, which generates warnings instead of errors during compile time, so can give you a better picture of what needs to be working and what needs to be changed. Crash reasons reporting. This is a new API, overlaps with what crash logging systems do, but this gives you a very good, reliable ANR info. This automatically uploads the crash files to server, which you can later query and check what's going on. And you can go through the list and iterate between reasons to see why your app has crashed. For native developers, we have a new tool called GWP ASAN, which is actually an improvement over HWA ASAN, which was released in Android 10. I'm not a super native developer guy, but basically this helps you to catch memory issues. And it can do it on wild because it has a very low footprint and doesn't really grow your APK size. So you can enable this and capture memory issues from real users, real devices. And once again, these reports are automatically uploaded to Play dashboard. It's super easy to use. All you need to do is go to your manifest and add Android GWASN mode and set it to always. And once you do that, if a crash occurs, you can access the crash log from your Play console. ADB Incremental is another new feature which can be super helpful if you have a large APK size, probably like a game. It can enable faster installs via command line, up to 10 times faster. And once again, you need to go to ADB shell to enable this and run ADB install incremental to enable. Most changes we talked about today are limited to Android 11, but you still need to toggle these behaviors to test your app's compatibility. To do this, you can toggle the behaviors on your device and test your app with that. You can do this in different ways. You can use the command line or the new developer options panel. Basically, you can use the command line or the app UI, the system UI you're seeing right now, and you can toggle between different behaviors to test how your apps reacts to that change or you need to do any changes at all. And this is what you need to do to enable it from the ADB shell. Here, we basically disable the default scope storage and test our app with that. Let's talk about a bit more on graphics and media. With Android 11 now we have NDK Image Decoders. This is a super interesting thing because we actually have had the decoders, but they were not, and they were in native code, but they were not exposed to SDK. So what you needed to do is basically call the SDK over NDK, and the SDK will do another GNI call to the image decoders. With Android 11 now, we have all the native decoders available, and you don't need to do any GNI lookups or use any third-party libraries. So you don't need to grow the size of the APKs. You can just use the new NDK image decoders to access image files. To use a decoder, you create a new decoder, create the asset, and then you can basically set up the target format, create a buffer for the decoded image, and finally decode the image. If you want to see more samples and learn more about this, you can go to GitHub Android NDK samples, and you will see different samples on the NDK image decoders. And we have another new thing called animated HEIF files, which is very similar to animated GIF files. These are loaded images from HEIF files. They are stored as animated image drawables. It's pretty much like GIF files, as I mentioned, but they're smaller and easier to work with. First, you need to load the HEIF files, and then when you're ready to animate, you can call the start method on the drawable, and the animation will start. If you're working with audio and specifically high performance audio, you probably worked with OpenSL ES before, which is deprecated now. So we have a new library called Oboe. It's an unbundled C++ library which helps you work with high performance audio, and it works back to API level 16. If you're interested in audio and want to learn more about Oboe, you can check out github.com, Google Oboe for how to use and integrate Oboe to your app. This is a very interesting topic because, well, until recently, almost all the devices in the market and we develop on used to run with 60 frames per second. But this has been changing really fast, and now apps have better frame per second rates. So if your app has its own rendering loop, such as games, this might be even more important for you. And what happens is, if the device can support 120 frames per second, but your app cannot catch up with that, automatically the system takes it back to 60 frames per second. However, maybe your app can still catch up with 90 frames per second. So with this API, now you can create fallback rates, which if your app cannot catch up with the desired rate, you can fall into that and still give a better user experience than dropping to 60 or 30 frames per second. So how to use this API, you need to set the frame rate on Surface Object, and then you can create different backup rates and have a better user experience. The NDK Thermal API makes it easier for your native applications, such as, again, games, to directly respond the device's current thermal status and also the changes to the thermal status. Native apps might really need this and act according to this, because it's not only your app. If the device gets super hot and goes through a shutdown process, your app and the other apps responsible for that will be shut down too. So maybe it's better to wait for a while the device cools before you start using the device resources again. And with the new NDK Thermal API, you don't need to do any GNI calls, and it's much easier to use. First, you need to create a listener to handle thermal status changes. Then, once you get your listener called, you can check the status messages, such as status shutdown, which means the device is actually shutting down and it's too hot, or statuses like emergency, critical OS, which means the device might not be in a very good state, but still not shutting down or anything. So you may want to lower your resource usage, or something like resource status none, which means the device is working in a cool, great state, and you can use any resource and use the app. You're in full speed. And this is not all. 5G is coming, and I'm pretty sure it will change our user experience a lot. We have some APIs to optimize the 5G experience. Specifically, if you give an example, if you're running in a metered network with a huge bandwidth of 5G, you can easily use a lot of data, and the users might not be happy. To give some sample code to do this, you get the connectivity manager from the system, then add your callback for listening the network capabilities. And once you have the capabilities, you can check if the network is metered or not, and also check if the bandwidth is 5G or some other fast network, and then act accordingly, such as using the full bandwidth or limiting your network usage. Another interesting thing happening is biometric authenticators. We see devices have different authenticators, and they're all very interesting and fun to use. We have finger sensors, 2D, 3D, face unlock, iris scanners, and so. And however, these authenticators have different strengths, and in your app, you might look for a stronger authenticator than the user used, such as if you're writing a banking app and doing money transfers, you probably want to rely on a real strong authenticator rather than a weak one. With this new API, you can actually check the current authenticator. You can ask for the level of strength from the authenticator. And you can also check if the current authenticator matches what you ask for. And if not, you can still ask the user to enter their password or use some other authenticator. And finally, let's see some non-platform updates. Jetpack. Well, Jetpack is not part of Android 11 or Android 11 release cycle. Jetpack actually has its own release cycle of 2 weeks, and over 70 libraries are released every 2 weeks with Jetpack releases. But there are some new and recent releases which overlapped with Android 11 release. The first one is super interesting and super exciting, HILT, basically a simpler dependency injection framework built on Dagger. If you haven't looked at it, we have some code labs which show you to start HILT from beginning or migrating a Dagger app to HILT. So check out that. We have new paging tree library, which is written all in Kotlin and supports coroutines. There are new releases for Camera X Beta and many more. You probably have heard about Jetpack Compose. It's a new UI toolkit for Android. It's Kotlin-based and reactive. It's in pre-alpha stage, and it's developed in open, so you can go submit your requests and give it a try. Android Studio has released tons of goodies for developers. To start with, the 4.0 release is now stable, and it comes with Motion Editor, which helps you use motion layout very easily. Another interesting tool with 4.0 release is Layout Inspector. The Layout Inspector is a new iteration over the old one, and with the new Layout Inspector, there are some great tools such as showing your UI in a 3D perspective, which you can easily figure out the Z-index problems in your app if a view is covering and floating over another one, and you're looking for the non-visible one. And it also supports directly going to the right resource if you click on the properties on the left pane, right pane. So once you click a view, you can select any property to go to the file to edit that property. With 4.1 beta, there is a new tool called Database Inspector, which is a very, very useful tool. If you have done, even with very few, very little development experience, you always need to use databases. And almost every app has a database which backs its data. And it hasn't been super easy to modify or change data in the database. And with the database inspector, it's basically like editing a spreadsheet. You can change the values, try out new stuff. And the best thing is, if you're using Room and observing the data in your app, there's nothing you need to do. Everything will be reflected automatically in the app without restarting or re-navigating to the activity or fragment. So it works like a charm, and I'm super excited with the database inspector. With 4.2 Canary, we have the wireless debugging, which we mentioned before, as well as the Jetpack Compose development. If you have played with Jetpack Compose before, you remember you needed to download a special Android Studio version, but now it's in Canary, so there is no excuse not to try Jetpack Compose anymore. And finally, we have a new Google Play console, which is completely redesigned. We are hoping it's much clearer and easier to use. And now you have a dedicated policy status section as well as acquisition reports. And you can also handle team management. And now it's in beta. With that, I guess I'm done with my slides, and I can check if you folks have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Murad.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, we do have a question over here. 1 second. Yep. So the question says, Android seems like an awesome topic. I want to start learning, but it seems never ending to learn it. How can I learn any technology the best way, in your opinion? Thanks.
So let me start with a very bad news. If you're a developer, your journey will never end. You will always learn some new stuff. I don't even remember what I start with, but everything changes. Your computers, your laptops, your mobile devices, they don't even just change to a new, faster one. They changed the form factor dramatically. We used to have laptops, now we have phones, and suddenly in between we have tablets. So things will change. And programming languages and platforms need to cope up with that. So since we are not able to stop the change, and change is good, we will have a better understanding of what's going wrong, and we try to fix it with the language and the platform. And since these things need to change, let's see. First, if you're starting new, we have great resources. We have trainings, code labs, videos. So the first question is how you like to learn. If you like courses, we have released a new pathway course. I don't remember the exact address, and I wasn't prepared for the question. But if you follow my Twitter, I can tweet the URLs just after this talk. We also have courses we prepared with Udacity for beginner to advanced levels. So go find the course which helps you understand, not others. You don't need to worry about the popularity of the course or resource. Basically, it should help you to learn, not it doesn't need to do anything else. And if you like reading code and working with the code, I always love learning from code labs. They are more dedicated to the topic. If you want to learn Work Manager, you go and see the Work Manager code lab, and you learn Work Manager, not like a bunch of other stuff around it. But yeah, for me, I would say if you're starting new, go find a course, learn the basics, learn the language and the platform, and then you can go to Code Labs and find a topic which you're really interested in and want to learn more about it.
Awesome. Okay, so there's another question that says, is there an article to read more about these updates, please?
Um, I need to check. We do release some blog posts at the time of launches, but I'm not sure how much we covered in the blog post. You had this video. I guess you want a medium which you can read. I don't know. I really need to check if we have published anything to cover everything in this much detail. Probably not. Maybe more like just highlights.
Awesome. Okay, we will wait for 30 seconds for more questions.
Perfect. Let me ask a question. Any Dagger users who tried Hilt in the audience? Love to hear what they think while I wait. Okay, I guess not.
Okay, so the timer is finished. Thank you so much, Murad. It's been a pleasure to have you tonight with us.
Thank you.
And
It was
yeah,
my pleasure to join, and I'd love to say see all of you, but yeah, we kind of had that connection.
thank you so much. Have an awesome day, Murad.
You too. Thanks. Thank you all.